Salesforce. So yeah, let's get going. Let's see if my mouse is actually working. Well, now it is connected. All right. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys because I got to do a lot of really cool stuff over the past year. So I want to talk to you about how we've been doing prototyping within the user experience group here at Salesforce. So I always like to start with sort of physical example, but before I do that, I have to show you this. Forward-looking statements. Basically, we are a publicly traded company, do not make any purchasing decisions based upon what you see in these slides, only use what is available to you in the product today. That said, let's talk about sufficiently complex machinery. I was looking on the internet trying to figure out something that would kind of embody lots of different dimensions, if you will. So I found this watch with one of those cool, like, tourbillon kinds of things. I might be butchering that. But, you know, when you're doing information architecture, right, and you have a constrained space, you have to make the most out of what you have. You have this sort of, like, layout, right? You have to, like, figure out what's going to fit where. Inside this machine is also a lot of very fine-grained data. You have things that are under stress, things that are moving, but really what the user needs is just a lens onto that. They need to know the time, or maybe the status of the role, or maybe how much reserve power that they have. And then there's ways of interfacing with it, right? There's physical controls. They don't need to touch the gears, they just need to touch one part of it. You give them an affordance or a signifier saying, this is how you interact with this machine. And of course, there's the other dimensions of color and choreography, of how you separate one bit of information from another bit of information, and how do you explain kind of where things transition to from maybe one particular state of time to the next state of time. And so I think of when you start to like think about all these different dimensions, right? You have this kind of like storytelling of user, this is where you are, this is where you can go. So as user experience professionals, as information architects, these are the levers, these are the dimensions that you play in, and making sense for your users is really what all of our jobs is about. At Salesforce, I mean, JD gave you an overview of the product, right? It's this thing with a whole bunch of clouds, as we call them. Many different moving parts, many different data sources, all coalesced into one single unit, but then viewed through many, many, many different lenses. So I think of this as like one of the ultimate kind of like Rubik's Cube puzzles, right? It's this multidimensional thing where you have to figure out how to contain all of this information and everybody's desires into a coherent system that they can actually still use. So I'm going to take you on a journey of discovery, of kind of figuring out how do we actually work with all this stuff. But before I do that, this is me, and I program computers. I do lots of things, but in terms of the design system, I'm one of the people who actually architected and built it. So I've spent a lot of time digging around in the code. Feel free to ask me any questions later. These days, I spend a little more time programming humans, so that's kind of cool. People are a little more interested in computers sometimes. And my central focus within user experience has been in rapid prototyping. More specifically, I do interactive prototypes. So not just like drawing things on the whiteboard, which is really cool, but actually prototyping frameworks so that we can actually explore all these different dimensions. So I'm going to take you on a little journey here. Salesforce, in my opinion, is like the most complex system out there. It's really hard to fathom all the stuff that people have thrown into a 17-year-old product, but every day my mind is just boggled what people do with this thing. So kind of like the base layer is this this concept of a cloud. Think of it as a database, right? But it's not just a database, it's a database of concepts of objects with relationships. And on top of that, you have an application there that kind of takes all this data and actually makes sense out of it. But we're not done there. You actually have to have some sort of a lens on top of all of that. You have to have the applications. You have to either have your desktop or your mobile device. That's how you actually get to it. Those are your controls, right? And so in terms of user experience, all the cool stuff that I get to play with, it's really the top visible half of what, of this huge cloud architecture. And my job is to give you guys all the ability to be able to get down to your data that you've stored into it. So how many people have used Salesforce? Okay, awesome. So you might know what I'm going to talk about when I say, let's start with an object type, like a contact. We deal with lots of sales data. We deal with lots of other kinds of data too. But inside the database, you can think of that there's different kinds of object types. So here I've got an example of accounts, contacts, and opportunities. You would think you log into Salesforce, you can navigate to one of these three object types, and then you start going like, okay, well then within accounts, maybe there's 3 accounts. Within contacts, maybe 3 contacts, and so forth. So if you're going to go ahead and look for one small bit of information, let's say you want to find something in the gene point record, right? Your journey might start by going to an account list, seeing that there's a gene point record, so you click into that. Going to this info number 2, let's say it's somebody's address. You get that information, that's great, and then you leave the application. When people actually use Salesforce on a regular basis for their jobs, what we find is that they navigate from object to object continuously. It's not like they go reset to some top node of the hierarchy and then navigate down. They actually begin to navigate sideways, if you will. And one of the reasons is because when you dive into a record, say like the gene point example, you're looking at information that's going to be on that record, but then we also show you all the related information. Think of it as like foreign keys, if you will. And then so you can navigate, maybe starting from an account, and you end up on a different record. And you have an opportunity, and then you end up somewhere completely different. So when you think about like trying to figure out this problem using statics, using like a wireframe or Photoshop or a sketch, it's really, really difficult to put this into your head and say, well, looking at this screen, and then they're going to click something and end up over here at this record, and over here at this one, oh, but they have to get this one. Maybe they do some searching and they end up over here. It's really hard to explain that workflow just by using static screens. Imagine, if you will, breadcrumb. If you have a neat tree hierarchy, you can start at the top, you can navigate to, say, an account, navigate to gene point, and maybe show a breadcrumb all the way down to Andy Young. That's great, right? But then you start navigating and you continue navigating. How do you render a breadcrumb that is like 20 levels deep? It's entirely possible. People do this all the time, especially when you're looking at, say, service information. You just want to go and find out, okay, inside this particular record for Andy Young, you might have to go get a whole bunch of other information. So you can begin to get a sense of the complexity of the problem, right? You have to tell the users the usual questions we all ask ourselves. Where am I? What state am I in? And then what can I do next? So as prototyping, we try to help answer these very complex questions that JD and his design team actually imagine. So JD, I'm glad he brought up this example where we spent a lot of time prototyping this one page. This is that opportunity workspace. And so the first thing you'll notice is, where am I? I'm in a type of object called opportunity. I'm in a list. I got to this object by navigating from a list called closing next month. And then there's the title, Pyramid Emergency Generators, which is also, if you want to navigate to it, the pyramid construction account. Oh, and it's also in the needs analysis state. So you are deep within a hierarchy, even though it looks like a single page. It looks flat, but it isn't. And you can start to look at, okay, just what is the progress of this one record in terms of its life cycle? That itself is already a kind of like journey where this thing is in a needs analysis state, and then its next logical state is value proposition. And then, of course, even just focusing on just that, the question of what can I do? Well, you can click close to move to the next stage, or mark stage as complete. Both of those you might have to generate two different statics for, because if they click mark stage as complete, you might do one thing. If they click close, you might actually present them with a prompt saying, by the way, did you really want to close this? So with prototyping, we can actually build out these two different like interfaces and then test them. So let's look at what the difference between statics and an interactive prototype can do for you, right? So in statics, you get the layout. You can generally figure out where things are going. You can put in some fake data. And you can type in t-shirt user __ C. You do this enough times, it gets really boring. Trust me on that. You can figure out where all the buttons, all the controls. You can design little splashes of color. You're like, okay, we got this big white page. Let's spruce it up with some color. And of course, you can describe maybe some of the interactions. Like you click over on save, maybe a little bubble pops up. That's fine, right? But as with everything, every sufficiently complex machine, there's always more stuff in there, right? This is what you might consider an opinionated user interface, right? This is what we think an awesome experience looks like. We think, okay, well, you should be looking up here at the top bar, and then you might want to look at the activity, and while you're on the phone, you might go and start clicking things on the right. But we at Salesforce do not get this, we don't get the ability to say this is the only interface you ever get. As JD mentioned, the entire thing is actually completely configurable. It's driven by a whole metadata system. I actually took this as a screenshot last night. And so if you go in and you actually edit this page, not that edit button, but you can actually edit the page layout, you can see that each of these, this page is broken into several components, which you go into this alternate like kind of editor mode, and you can drag everything around. So you think that your information architecture is set from the moment you show the user a page, but really that's just the starting point of a journey, right? Because the user's going to take a look at this and go, you know what? Actually, these contacts are things I always look up, so I'm going to have to move it over to the left. And right there, if you had thought your interface was going to be like a very like precise kind of layout, you have to realize that somebody is going to make you a little bit sad sometimes. Another example of metadata-driven UI, we deal with lists. Basically, the main core of the product, I would say, deals with lists and document records. You think, okay, well maybe we'll put the big links over here on the left because people, at least in the United States, they kind of browse in an F-looking pattern, right? So then you put all the links over here. But the thing is, because this is completely configurable, these link columns can be far off to the right, maybe not even visibly on the screen. I'll prove that to you. If you go and you edit this list, you scroll down to the bottom, and oh my goodness, look there. You can change the fields that actually show up. So we have to consider all these dimensions, right? I'm just showing you the tip of the iceberg of the pain we deal with, because there's more. We deal with now so much surface area, it's almost mind-boggling. So most people who've used Salesforce over the years have experienced it on a desktop computer, right? You look at your laptop, you look at like a Windows PC with a touch screen, that's great. But now we live in a world of mobile-first designs. We live in a world with smartwatches, so many different screens. How do you build statics for each of these? It's just, you almost can't, right? I mean, all the form factors of iPhones or Android tablets, how do you account for this? There's more. Does anybody read Braille? I don't, but I'd love to. one of the things that we do at Salesforce is we put accessibility first. So just like JD was talking about, you don't get all the ponies, you really don't. Because sometimes the thing that you want to build, the beautiful, sleek, clean UI, the minimalist thing, you can't do that because people can't use it. We have to always consider accessibility. I spent a lot of time looking at this particular piece of code, right? Just making sure that all the tags were decorated with proper accessibility roles. Oh, yeah, by the way, there's hundreds of people engineering the product within the company, right? Not to mention people who actually are part of the ISVs or other third-party people. How do they actually understand all these guidelines? Especially when we change the design system guidelines frequently. Well, you have to consider all of these things. This is the scope of the problem. This is why we started doing the design system. This is why we started doing interactive prototypes. We got your layout, your data, your controls, all that stuff. And all those dimensions have to be billable by teams 3 times a year. We release every 4 months. And it also has to be maintainable. You think you do your work once, you can't do it just once. You have to do it repetitively. So that one component you designed in Sketch, well, if it changes because of the design system, how do you update that? Well, a prototype is one great way of doing it. So we have a lot of tools in our toolbox, and I want to talk to you about how prototyping kind of fits into this. So you think you have statics, you have prototypes, you can spec out animations. Interactive prototypes is now one of the most powerful tools that we have because basically you can put every single one of these things inside a prototype, and the prototype can be this hybrid monster of various things that are non-functional and things that are very, very interactive. Let's take a step back and think about where UX's role is in this particular this situation. So let's say you want to ship a product, right? You have engineers that build stuff and then talk to salespeople, you sell it, you get money. That's great. In a perfect world, this is a very simple pipeline. But then at some point, your product becomes really, really complex. So you have to add designers and user experience professionals into the mix, right? Oh wait, at some point, you also have to begin thinking about how does this affect our users? Do we understand our users' concerns when we build a design? Will it actually be built by the engineers? Can we sell it? Oh, yeah. And at some point, it's going to get even more complex because before the UX researchers can actually run their studies, maybe we have to run it on a whole bunch of devices. That's where we start to come in, the UX prototypers. And finally, I always bring back accessibility because it's awesome. When you look at how we all work together, we actually work as a huge team. And together, this is how we are able to ship a product as complex and as large as Salesforce. But I want to focus on just the left-hand side of the screen. I want to focus on UX researchers, UX prototypers, UX designers, and accessibility experts. Because together, what we did is we got together. You saw JD's posters in the room. We saw all those collaboration sessions. We took the best lessons that we got out of that, and we put it into kind of codified system. We call it the Lightning Design System, or SLDS for short. And so one short quick note, you'll notice that if you look at Salesforce, there's 2 mentions of Lightning. There's a Lightning experience and a Lightning Design System. The Lightning experience is kind of the whole thing of the product in its current state. The Lightning Design System is kind of the rules to build that product. This is where you get your fonts, your colors, your metrics. That's what we use also in prototyping. I'm going to kind of fly through this part really quickly, but the design system is kind of like, we have it on a webpage called lightningdesignsystem.com. The nice thing about it is it's open source. You can actually take this, download it, adapt it for your needs. We update it very, very frequently, and also you will be using the same tools that we use internally. JD talked about the design principles. Here they are again: clarity, efficiency, consistency, beauty. let me take you on a very quick tour of a couple of the things which I think set this design system apart from other design systems. Here you have a pretty standard color palette. If you've ever gone to any company's style guide, you might see a color palette like this. The difference is that we actually have this in code, so you don't have to hard code anything. In fact, you should not hard code anything. You should use things like the SAS. How many people use SAS, CSS? You know what I'm talking about. It's basically CSS, but it's compiled CSS. So you can speak using variables and then get these particular color values, right? Or these color metrics. And when we update the design system, all you have to do is recompile your application and you're good to go. Take another thing like spinners. It's an animated component. We have guidelines of when you use spinners, when you would use a stencil. But the design system actually has code. And if you clicked over here to that little tab, you would also see the styles we use to drag it. So you get things like animation and then accessibility. And all you've got to do is cut and paste the code. That's great. Another thing I was bringing up is like if you have forms, right? One of the huge things is that they are really, really complex beasts, and if you're worried about accessibility, you have to make certain design decisions about where you put labels, how long you make particular bits of information. Well, we've solved that for you too. Just go in there, copy the code, and you can at least, it's not full of JavaScript, right? You just copy the HTML, and you'll have to adapt it to the framework of your choice, but at least you'll get a really good starting point. That's that design system, and you can get it on GitHub. Let's talk about how prototyping actually uses this, because basically we spent a bit of time doing prototyping and we realized we can crystallize those things into a design system. Now, use the design system back with your prototyping. In the world that I work in daily, we take the SLDS design system markup and the styles, we add some modern JavaScript libraries, and then we add data to the whole mix. We sometimes use sample data, sometimes we use actual data. It's fun. And on top of that, we build what we call spikes, little tiny concerted efforts. And so we take these spikes and then kind of combine them all together. Let's take this as an example. Like back on the Opportunity Workspace, we could have done, say, a spike just for this global navigation strip, or just as the search, or just with the header. And then what we do is we combine all that together. So we can have a focused effort working on maybe one part, and then later on see it in a larger context, right? One of the great things is that it allows us to move really fast. You can mix and match components. Like, it's not like A/B testing, because our customers already bought our product. It's more of a case of which one do we think is better, and we can validate that through research. Let's go back and talk about data for a second. This is one of the coolest bits. So we use, in prototype, we use the same REST API that you can use. With this JavaScript library, and what we can do with this is we can take an interface and then light it up with actual data. So this part over here in the bottom left, this might actually just be an image, but the rest of the stuff might actually be drawn from a database. So what that gives you is that when you start taking an interface that you're experimenting with and you throw real data at it, you begin to see all the other points where things might break. You begin to understand how people actually use your interface. And then when you pull it in for research testing, you suddenly realize that maybe your font is actually too small, because with Asian characters, you actually have to render them 1.2 grams in height, or that your labels in German are way out, and you've now clicked off the verb on the far right end of it. You might not know that if you're just doing sample data, which, by the way, is really, really hard to create, right? Sample data to make relational sample data takes a very long time. If you just actually plug in real data that already has relationships built in, you see a lot of these problems almost immediately. Getting kind of close to the end of the talk, but I really want to show this cool thing, the motion and animation section. It's one of those cool extra things that we were able to do last year. The designers and my team sat together and said, one of the things you have to consider when you're designing is that design is not just flat. Design exists in space-time, right? Because you have this dimension of things were in one state and then they move to a different state. And so when you think about animation, how would you describe animation over time? Well, a storyboard is one of those tools, but imagine making storyboards for everything. And then also having to train people on how they might actually use a storyboard. So what we did instead is that we took all of these principles and we wrote them down and put them on the design system website. So you can go over here to the design motion section and you can see like our key principles. We took animation as a whole and broke it down into timing bits, elevation bits, and effects. And so even within just types of animation, there's ones where we have enter and exit, things that are emphasized because things are on screen, but maybe you need to draw people's eye to them. Things that are entering in, things that are changing state with the transitional, and things that are like personality branding stuff. Another thing that I'd like to point out is that we actually tried to create a logical, rational framework around all this with, like, say, a fixed, globally illuminated light source. It's fancy way of saying the shadows always go down. Things have physical mass. Things don't just suddenly pop in on the screen. They actually have to speed up and then slow down. If you're familiar with the illusion of light, there's like 12 sort of like animation principles for like how you think about like moving objects on the screen. It's somewhat similar to that. Another really cool thing is describing elevation in an actual like system. Imagine a z-axis that is protruding from the screen. Well, you can actually use those same values that we use. I mentioned earlier, there was like shadows and colors. You can use those values, and when we change those values, it just kind of updates your look and feel as well. Finally, there's this thing for named animations. So this is really cool. I'm going to hop over, just show you real quick. So what we did with this was we give people a common vocabulary to talk about animations. For example, fading out and fading in. Still the same world, right? But when you actually see it, it makes a lot more sense than describing to somebody. Somebody might say that that's a disappear and a reappear. In this case, we get to normalize the language to fades or to color transitions. Or you start to get to much more complex stuff like 3D flips. Whereas if you rotate around the other axes, that's known as a roll. So you begin to combine all these things together. So I'll show you a quick demo. Am I good on time? Good. Okay. So things like this, or things like this, we can actually specify it all by using language. Yeah. That's pretty much the talk. Are there any questions?
We can take one and then
So much information, I know you're just
yeah, it's like amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone wants to like kind of ask questions,
Right.
which I really enjoy. So let's take one question and then we finish off because of the day itself. We finish off and then we next round.
be around.
Great, yes.
Thank you very much. I'm very impressed by Lightning Design. I've downloaded it, looked through the mono repo, really technically, as well as, of course, the visual and animation and all the design is very impressive. So thank you very much for setting an example for the rest of us. I'm curious, logistically, how many people work on it full-time? Designers, developers, interaction, visual, like how does that get organized and how does Salesforce take it on?
I would say that we are a very large group, but we're not in the hundreds, we're probably in the low hundreds. I don't have an exact number for you, but the idea is that we have small core teams and we all kind of come together as designers, as developers, as researchers. And so there was a much more group of us that kind of took that all in and then created the SAS files, HTML markup, made sure it passed accessibility and things like that. So, all right. That's it. Thank you.